You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Rene Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me. In the background, you can see Megan Connor. She is also doing a live. Thanks for joining me tonight. We are going to be watching the Dateline special at 8 p.m. I'm on Mountain Time. I don't know what time you're on. If you are on Pacific Time, you got another hour. I don't know how that's going to work. Central Time, you're an hour ahead, so you're all done. So comment if you've got a preview of coming attractions, get on board and comment. Let us know what we're going to watch. I think I got a friend that's going to be joining me here pretty soon if my email went through. It's about 7:51, so we have about 10 minutes before the show starts. And it's going to be interesting. Have you watched the trailers? I watched Keith Morrison with the guy from Idaho, Nate. Anyway, he's fabulous. He's just the guy that's followed all of the trials. And he interviewed Keith Morrison. And I think his name's Nate Easton. Is that what it is, from Idaho? You know, Keith Morrison was just saying this is one of the most difficult interviews he's ever done. And one of the things he said was that he's interviewed people that were obviously mentally ill. But she was very coherent and in control. Very much in control. He mentioned that she had a very a great memory, great details. She kind of took control quite often. And so in a couple of the trailers that I've seen, she has that irritating thing. This is not political, all right? I'm just talking about a communication process. One of the things that really irritates me when I've seen JD Vance being interviewed is he'll continually call the interviewer by name. Like he'll say, well, Nancy, I don't know, Nancy. No, Nancy, you need to do this. Well, Nancy, this is, every time he would start out a sentence, he would call her by name. So Lori does that in the interview. She's like, well, Keith, how about this? Well, Keith, what would you do? Or, well, Keith, how old are you? And so I'm very, I can't wait for it to get started. I think it's only an hour. I mean, I think Dateline only goes for an hour. Does it go longer than that? Do you guys know? But I loved my interview that I did with Megan. And she talked about, or maybe it was someone else. They were just talking about how normally jails don't allow cameras. I think Nate mentioned this, Nate Easton, and how he tried to get an interview with Lori in Idaho. And the courts were like, no, we don't allow cameras in our jails and our prisons. You know, he kind of kept in contact with her. First of all, in Idaho, they would not let him interview her until after sentencing. And here in Arizona, she hasn't even gone to trial yet, and they're letting it happen. So that's kind of interesting. Keith is going to have Nate on his show today. He's going to be one of the people that's on the show. So that will be interesting to find out too. I don't know anything about Arizona law, but I'm wondering, since she's already been convicted of 3 or 4 lifetime sentences in Idaho, when this is all done, I don't know whether she'll stay in Arizona or go back to Idaho. I know in Idaho, the death sentence was taken off the table. That was part of the negotiation. But in Arizona, it is on the table. So I'm sure that after the trial, whatever the sentencing is, if she gets a death sentence, I would think she would stay in Arizona, but I don't know for sure if that's what it's going to be. I don't know how they're going to work it. I know in Idaho, there were places for the regular citizens to come in and watch the trial. And people were getting there, 2 days in advance and camping out overnight so they would get a seat in the courtroom. And here I am in Arizona. I live in Maricopa County. And so think I might try to get a seat. And if they're going to let normal old citizens come in and watch, I'm going to try and go there. Lauren Matthias, if you need a place to stay when you come in, I got extra bedrooms down here. So Yeah, and Beth of True Crime, Mormon True Crime. Beth's probably going to be following it, and if you, well, she's in Mesa as well, so I don't think that'll be a problem. But yeah, it's going to be really fascinating. I'm sure Nate will be here covering it. It's just amazing how the justice system works. And when I did my interview with Megan, I love how she really emphasized the fact that, the court has a system and they work by law and you can only do so much, right? So you have to just take and go with the flow with who do they have the most evidence on. And you can't go with speculation. You can't go on hearsay. You have to have really true evidence. And so there's a lot of things that I know people try to armchair quarterback, right? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't, because Megan and I were talking and it's like, Melanie Gibb, people have said, why hasn't she been arrested? She knows more than she's saying. And then Zulema, who was Alex Cox's wife, did she know more? And why aren't they arresting her? And then the niece, Melanie, that was the ex-wife of Brandon Brudeau, I think that's his name. Why isn't she being brought in? And who knows? I don't know. It maybe with the Arizona people in the Arizona trial, it will go on. But let's get on the show. Let's make sure that we're.
As her jailers led her down the black and white hallway, Phoenix, Arizona's jail for women.
There we go.
Come on in. And yes, I felt a moral.
Hey, Lila.
This
Okay, so we just started watching. I finally got it on. So here we go. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger.
Well, there you go. But perhaps half a decade after the events that put her here, she would finally tell us why.
Yeah, it's probably coming out of
Why
my.
her children are dead. And her ex-husband and her lover's wife. Why all that death and mayhem?
Yeah, it's coming out of my computer.
But Lori Vallow, as I was about to discover.
Okay, so it's coming out of my computer, so you're probably hearing me and the computer. Let me
You're the most
mute my mic.
hated mom in America.
I heard that. And we all know what the media does. And they exaggerate everything and they make stuff up and they twist things around. So I don't know how it became what it is today. It's amazing to me. And I don't really know. And I'm not exposed to what's going on out there.
Are you misunderstood?
Absolutely. But
Misunderstood how? I mean, how do
in
they get
every
you
way, I
wrong?
mean, how do you know a person if you never talked to them in 5 years? How do you know anything about them? How do you know anything about their life? About how it really is?
You remember the case, right? Who can forget it?
Hey, Chad and Lori, it's Dateline. How are you? Just heading out today?
Oh, no comment.
We began our coverage just over 5 years ago on the island of Kauai, where in January 2020, we found Lori and her fifth husband, Chad Daybell, just the two of them, seemingly on holiday, without a care in the world.
Where are your kids?
Except,
There's a lot of people who are worried about your kids.
yes, except
Are you guys worried about them?
that this was just months after Lori's children, 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ, had simply vanished
JJ,
from their home in Idaho,
say hi.
vanished from the face of the earth.
Happy family.
And by then, police had learned about other suspicious deaths in Chad and Lori's inner circle.
What happened to Tammy, Chad?
Chad's wife, Tammy, found dead one autumn morning in Idaho, just a couple of weeks before Chad married Lori. Also recently dead, Lori's fourth husband, Charles Vallow. Charles had been shot to death by Lori's brother, Alex Cox.
You know, no weapons? No weapons on me.
And then not far away, in another Phoenix suburb,
Where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window?
a 911 call from the estranged husband of Lori's niece. It appeared to him someone was trying to kill him.
So I was just pulling in.
So, well, you get the picture.
I'm getting shot at, so I drove straight.
And the two people at the center of all these strange goings-on, the missing kids, the dead husband, the dead wife, the driveway shooting, claim to be leaders of the gathering of the 144,000 chosen people, who, according to their own unique reading of the Book of Revelations, would amass in a spot in southeastern Idaho near the town of Rexburg to greet the second coming of Christ. Chad Daybell and his new wife, Lori Vallow. In February of 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii and flown back to the state where her children had disappeared, Idaho.
Welcome back, Lori. Where are your kids?
Where again, she refused to give the police any help at all. And then, 4 months later,
Police found what they believed to be human remains.
the bodies of the 2 children, JJ and Tylee, were found in Chad Daybell's backyard. They were charged with murder then. And after many delays,
Guilty.
the jury sentenced Chad Daybell to death. And Lori?
Guilty.
Multiple convictions
Guilty.
and a sentence of life in prison in Idaho. We met Lori Vallow 6 weeks ago at the Estrella unit of the Maricopa County Jail in Phoenix, where she is soon due to go on trial again, twice, charged with conspiracy in the attempted murder of her niece's husband.
Alrighty then.
And the murder of her own 4th husband, Charles. Got all that?
I'm in trial coming up, as you know. Do you know that, Keith?
Oh, I
Are
know
you
that.
keeping track?
Oh, I'm keeping track. So combative is how she was going to be. Practicing, perhaps? She is representing herself in court now. And she made the decision to meet me for an on-camera interview because she had been telling us she wanted to tell the truth.
It's not fun when so many things are not true.
Well, we'll get to that, won't we? Oh, yes. We'll get to lots of things. To Jesus in a jail cell.
He has a great sense of humor, and he's super, super funny.
To tall tales you know just can't be true.
You're asking me personally, the only person on the earth who really knows, and you're shaking your head no, like that didn't happen.
To the bizarre claim Lori laid on the son who lived to tell the story. Did you believe any of that stuff? To the investigators who speak out for the first time and reveal how they cornered Lori and found those missing children.
Worry no more.
To a story that got weird the moment Chad laid eyes on Lori.
I've loved him for eternities.
Eternities.
It's amazing how combative she is.
Yeah. Sassy.
Yeah.
And so like full of herself and almost how can she be still in this mindset after, being in prison and having all these things, all these allegations, she's still in this mindset of you just don't know everything. And, Jesus and I were like this. I just can't even.
Well, and the thing that is interesting is she's functioned. And I know they're going to be interviewing Colby. And he talks about what a great mom she was and how much he loved her. And like Megan said, when I interviewed her, people, she was the best cupcakes and primary chorister and just the best person and so kind. How do you put that facade on for 40, 50 years? And then suddenly it's like, is it truly an act? Is it truly just a way that she thinks she's going to convince people? Or has she convinced herself? Or is it just an act?
I think she's convinced herself. I do. I think she's to the point now where I think all the evidence is so obvious and it's proving that she's a co-conspirator or that she planned this. Instead of just admitting it and going that route, she's going to play this other thing the whole way through. And I think she's convinced herself that they did not murder people. They took zombies out.
Yeah.
That's how she's making it okay.
I love the fact that they have the temple in the background. It's going to be interesting to see how much of the religion comes out. And maybe this isn't even a conscious thing. Maybe it's a subconscious thing. But I can't help but wonder when she sees the apostles and the other people talk about revelations, talk about, I felt this or I had this feeling, and it works and people believe them and people follow their stuff. And so she's like, well, if they can get away with it, I can get away with it. Or if it's true for them, why isn't it true for me? Okay, so I have someone say, I wouldn't put it past her to start a cult inside and start a prison riot.
The question hung in the air during our sometimes strange jailhouse conversation, for me at least.
And I will love him for eternities in the future.
Was the meeting that launched all this the result of pure chance? Or was it what Lori Vallow always wanted? She was born into a large Mormon family in Southern California in 1973. and was a charmer from the very start, but was unlucky in love. 3 husbands by the age of 28, had a young son named Colby, who, as a boy, adored his hairdresser mom.
I would say my mom is multi-talented. She's always loved to do different things, sing, dance.
And oh, Lori loved the spotlight.
Wow.
Competed on the TV game show Wheel of Fortune.
How's the hair in Austin?
It's good.
Good.
Us is a happening place.
Probably thanks to you.
Pretty much.
And even in the Mrs. Texas pageant in 2004, during which she offered what now sounds like prophecy.
I'm basically a ticking time bomb.
But aside from that, she was a neighborhood fun mom.
She was always being the one to pick everybody up and sing karaoke at the family party. And she just got everybody excited to have fun.
By 2006, she'd had a second child, a girl named Tylee. Divorced Tylee's father and married her 4th husband, Charles Vallow.
He was so nice to me. He was so nice to Tylee. He seemed like he genuinely cared about us.
And in 2014, Lori and Charles adopted Charles's great nephew,
Big.
little boy named JJ,
Hello.
who was autistic.
Hi, JJ.
Hi, JJ.
Hi, Colby.
Hi, Colby.
I fell in love with him instantly.
You're so cute.
I would get up in the middle of the night, run up to the room to see if he was breathing, just stand there and just is his chest moving? Yeah. So I loved him so much.
What was it about him?
He just has such a great spirit.
And so it went.
My child.
Until 2018, when Lori went to a get-together at her church in Phoenix to hear an end-time speaker named Melanie Gibb.
She had a lot of the same energy I did, enthusiasm for learning and excitement for the second coming.
Like Lori, Melanie was drawn to a particular end-times theology that their Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints considered too extreme. And as of that day, they became fast friends.
So like a sister kind of a friend that you just meet suddenly and just like, this girl's a lot like me.
So Melanie listened to Lori's stories about her husband, Charles Vallow, and 3 kids. By then, Colby was 22, Tylee 16, and JJ was 6. Melanie got the impression that her new friend was struggling.
JJ was a lot of work for her.
Sure.
And he was running around and she was trying to make him happy. And then Tylee did not have a good relationship with her mom.
So when Melanie Gibb suggested a road trip to attend a religious conference in St. George, Utah, Lori didn't need much persuading.
I kept getting ideas to write a novel, but when you're...
And once there, Melanie discovered that Chad Daybell, a man she knew was one of the speakers. Chad was an author of end-times themed fiction, claimed to have had near-death experiences that allowed him to see the spirit world, see the past, the future. Lori and Melanie went to hear him speak. And after, Lori met Chad. She was 45 then, he 50.
Do you remember the first meeting with Chad?
Absolutely.
What was that like?
That was amazing.
Tell me about it.
It was amazing because the veil was once again opened and we remembered each other.
The veil? Why, the veil between heaven and earth. And that, said Lori to Melanie, is how she knew she and Chad had met in past lives. Lots of times. Chad's past lives?
How many?
31.
And Lori's past lives.
How many lives had she supposedly had?
21. And just 5 on this planet. Both of them had 5 on this planet.
Oh, wait a minute.
Just on this planet.
Where were the other ones?
Other Earths that were located in the universe.
My spirit was standing up, looking down at my body.
But now,
And
years after that meeting and all the trouble that followed it, sitting here talking to me in jail, maybe Lori would finally recognize a more normal reality.
I mean, it's unlike anything earthly once you're out of your body. I was like, this is
No.
I recognized him spiritually. He recognized me spiritually, that we had known each other for eternities. Chad, hi.
Hello.
Soon, Chad appeared on a podcast with Lori and Melanie.
Glad to be on the podcast with you.
And then, just 3 weeks after he met Lori, Chad traveled from his home in Idaho to Arizona for a religious meeting at Lori's house. Well, Lori's husband, Charles, was out of town.
Did you see evidence that she and Chad were falling in love?
Oh, yeah. I asked her, like, why don't you get a divorce? And she said, well, Chad and I are not allowed to.
Lori's reason? She and Chad, she told Melanie, were exalted, godlike, no divorce for deities.
So I can see your enthusiasm.
Something we asked Lori about, or tried to.
So when Chad came along and said you're a goddess and you've lived for, since the beginning of time, and
Who
so is
said
he.
that Chad said that? Are you saying that Chad said that?
No,
Did you hear Chad say that to me? You've heard a lot of stuff, Keith, and
But
I'm here
what-
to say you've heard a lot of stuff,
What-
but what I tell you will be the truth.
Well, will it be? Was it ever? With Chad in the picture, said Melanie Gibb, Lori began saying some strange and disturbing things about husband Charles.
Chad calls and says, I just want to let you know that Charles, something happened to him. His spirit is no longer on this earth. It is in the spirit world. And there was this character named Ned Snyder, and now he was possessing Charles's physical body.
So what, he'd become a demon or something? Or
I guess you could call it that. They later phrased it as a zombie, but in the beginning they just said Ned.
Poor Charles had no idea about any of this, of course, until Lori told him. Because a couple of weeks after that phone call, at the end of January 2019, Charles called the police.
I can't get in touch with my kids.
After coming home from a trip and finding his truck and his family gone.
Messed up doctrine in her brain.
Yeah. The part that I'd love to talk with the professional is we've all heard that. Every single thing that she has said. How many times have we heard people say, I met her at a dance. I knew she was the one for me. Our spirits knew each other. Or the whole my turn on earth.
Yeah. And what's the other one? Saturday's Warriors.
Yes. Yeah. And, even Michelle Stone, when she was talking to John DeLynn on the show, I knew that my girls knew each other in the pre-existence, and I knew that I was supposed to be their mother. And I knew that they both died because they needed to be together, but they needed to come to earth for me to be their mother. Hello?
It's the same kind of stuff. It's all the same kind of stuff. It's this, somehow we know what happened before we came, and that way we can now manipulate things and we can explain things that we do here that don't make sense, that aren't right, but we feel we're justified because of what happened before, which no one knows, especially if you don't have if your mental state is not very strong. The doctrines can play on that, and people can twist things even more so and make it even more dramatic. I mean, think of all the murders and things that have taken place by LDS people who use scripture as a reason to do what they've done. It's even in the scripture. It's even in the book of Mormon.
We were just talking about how when we have a place in Draper that we're snowbirds that we go to in the summertime. And it didn't even occur to me as I'm walking along Porter Rockwell Trail, nice little paved trail. All of a sudden I'm on the trail. I'm like, wait a minute. They named a trail after this murderous guy? Surely what? And then I thought, okay, I'm going to find, because I Googled it. I thought, I got to find, there's a statue. There is a statue of him and the little history of how he settled this area and what he did in that area. And people accept it. They accept the dogma that's been that they're brainwashed to think that he was a hero. He was Joseph Smith's bodyguard. He was Brigham Young's bodyguard. It's like, he murdered people.
I see how it happens. And because we were there, right? We've lived this. And I remember thinking, maybe I covenanted before I was born to marry my husband, and all my children, I covenanted to them that I would give them a body and bring them to
Yeah.
It was in part of the doctrine. Okay, here we are.
She spoke to my other house to say, we're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a god.
Charles Vallow felt the ground shifting under his feet. His wife, Lori, had, in his words to local police, lost it. Ever since she'd met this guy at a religious conference named Chad Daybell, Charles said,
She was different.
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now."
Charles's anxiety was fully apparent on the body cam video.
But it's gotten really, really bad lately. She's had a break. "I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow." I'm not irrational or stupid or anything. I just want her, I want her to get it out. Yeah. She's my life. I love her to death. Something's going on.
Okay.
Later, at Charles's request, Lori submitted to a mental evaluation.
Hello.
Her visit was captured on police body cam too.
I got in an argument with my husband.
Lori told the police that Charles was the problem, said he had cheated on her, and then flew into a rage when she confronted him.
Unfortunately, yeah, we've had to leave and go to hotels just to like calm us down or something, you know.
The cops seemed sympathetic.
Just talking to you, I mean, I don't see you being a danger to yourself or anybody else.
Thank you.
And that's exactly what the mental evaluation found.
I'm going to go check and see if I can go in there.
But Charles seemed to know better. And at the end of June 2019, he sent an email to someone you'll hear a lot more about. Tammy Daybell, Chad's wife of nearly 30 years, and the mother of his 5 children. It read in part, "Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori." Well, surely Charles expected some reaction from Tammy, but
Nobody knows who opened that email, but it had been opened and deleted, and Charles Vallow's email had been blocked.
here's Nate Eaton of East Idaho News and an NBC News consultant.
So it's possible that Tammy Daybell did see the email and think, what is this? This is a weirdo. I'm going to delete it and block him. Or another theory is that Chad Daybell kept an eye on her email, deleted it, and then blocked the email in case Charles tried to contact her again.
Long story.
And so Charles received no answer. He was alone and frightened, perhaps, when he told those officers she was calling him a demon with a strange name.
Says, "I'm Nick Snyder. I've taken over Charles's body.
It wasn't Nick, of course, but Ned Schneider.
You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow."
But what did it mean? What were Chad and Lori up to?
And was that why
We asked her, and here's what happened.
Are you saying he became Ned Schneider?
Well, that's what he told the police, that you told him he was somebody named
Were
Ned
you there
Schneider.
when he told that to the police?
I have a video
Did you
of it.
hear it?
Yes, yes. He's on tape saying that to the police. He was terrified that you were going to kill him.
Really, Keith? Is that where you're going to go with this?
Well, that's what we're here to talk about. No, Lori wouldn't talk about Charles as Ned Schneider. But of course, she knew we had her text messages to her brother, Alex Cox, referencing Lori's belief that she could not move through portals to the spirit world while Charles was alive. Apparently, it is tied to Ned being gone, hopefully today or tomorrow. Alex responded, "Have fun and get rid of Ned already." And that, said the police, seemed to be exactly what happened. Because on July 10th, 2019, Alex spent the night at Lori's place. And the next morning, after Charles showed up at the house,
911, where is your emergency? I'm in police in an ambulance. I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
Subject that's been shot.
the police in Chandler, Arizona, were wearing body cams when they responded to the 911 call at Lori's house.
You know, no weapons?
No weapons on me.
All right, come on out this way.
And here they encountered Alex in the front yard.
He was just yelling at me. Okay.
Chandler Police Department, anybody inside, make some noise.
Inside, Charles, age 62, was lying dead on the living room floor.
Charles Vallow.
Alex claimed the shooting was in self-defense.
Charles is the husband of...
And as you can see, he kept touching the back of his head, where he claimed Charles had hit him with a baseball bat. Another tall tale. Investigators have watched the tape frame by frame, of course, since it happened. The lead investigator up in Idaho, Ron Ball, spoke for most.
I find it hard to believe that if Charles would have hit Alex in the head with a bat, that Alex would be up walking around with a minor cut on the back of his head. You know, Charles, he played minor league baseball. He knew how to swing a bat. I find it hard to believe.
The rest of what happened was also hard to believe. Though Lori was inside the house and certainly heard the gunshots that killed Charles, she promptly left. and took JJ to Burger King for breakfast and then dropped him off at school before returning to find the police at her house, where she behaved not at all like a shocked widow.
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
I said, what are you doing? He's not gonna hurt my sister. Okay.
Alex, Lori, and Tylee were all taken downtown to give statements and largely told the same story, that it was self-defense. No charges were filed. And then, just days later, Lori called the insurance company about Charles's $1 million life insurance policy.
Are you aware of who the primary beneficiary of the policy is? It's me.
Not exactly. Lori was informed that the beneficiary was, in fact, not her at all.
She found out within a few days that she was not getting any of the money because Charles had changed the beneficiary months earlier to his sister when he realized that Lori's mental health was not 100% and he was concerned that something might happen to him.
News that Lori had to break to Chad. She texted him, quote, "So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. It's a spear through my heart." There it was. We got rid of him, meaning Charles, and upset that his death by gunshot did not produce an insurance payout. So what would Lori Vallow say about all this?
There's certain things that I can't talk about.
Oh, because your trial is
I'm in
coming
trial coming up, as you know.
But in the late summer of 2019, Charles Vallow dead and gone, and nobody was keeping track of Lori when she suddenly picked up Tylee and JJ and they moved to Rexburg, Idaho. So close now to Chad and the unsuspecting Tammy Daybell.
You know, even though it's been a couple of years since all of this, and you know, this is all rehash of everything that was on there, it's still to see Tylee and JJ and Charles, especially Charles, just because he went for help, he tried to get help. And because he was a fit, good-looking man, they just didn't think he was in danger. It's like, how could you be afraid of that little wife of yours? You're a big guy. I'm sure you can handle this. The prejudice, I know we talk a lot about, you know, misogyny and things like that, but there are other cases of this assumption that the police have of you're fine. Why would, you know, why are you, you're a big guy. You can take care of yourself.
Yeah. You know, and then they took her in and questioned her and she just schmoozed them. She just used her charm and just, you know, made everything okay.
Yeah.
So they just thought that he was maybe just making things up. And then the next thing you know, he's dead. It's so tragic. And then she said right there, we got rid of him. We got rid of Ned.
You know, that's the thing. And as a confirmed feminist, and I know that there is a movement of women supporting women, but there are dangerous women out there that cause harm and make it hard for other women. And this is why women don't go to the police. They don't report a rape. They don't report abuse because they don't think they'll be believed because of people like Lori Vallow who lie, who make up stories. And so then when someone who truly is in danger goes to the police, they don't believe them. And so they need to be called out on that as well. Not just men, but the women too have to be called out on that behavior.
That's right.
You know, and so I mean, we've both had people in our congregations in our experience that have claimed abuse or claimed this and you know, nothing happened and the bishops believed them. And then the next woman comes in and says, my husband is bipolar and he's abusing me. And they're like, are you a good wife? Are you really being a good wife? Because of their experience with someone else. That's why I have a hard time with people that haven't done something quite as drastic as what Lori's done, like Michelle Stone, but they're still as dangerous. And it's not benign. It's not just, oh, well, that's what she believes. Who knows what could happen in the future because she's saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
God came to me.
Mm-hmm. It's the same kind of stuff and how she will figure out a way to spiritually make everything okay.
Yeah.
You know, even if in this case, taking lives, multiple lives, she has herself convinced that she did nothing wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
crazy. It's crazy how this can happen. I'm noticing that my hair looks too much like hers. I'm like, I gotta change my hairstyle.
Okay. I'm going brown starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
He loves everybody. I'm just his favorite.
You're his favorite.
No, I'm just teasing. It was a joke. Can I joke with you, Keith? Can we joke?
Yes, of course you
That's
can.
my bumper sticker. I said, if I ever had a bumper sticker, it would say, Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite.
We were well down the rabbit hole now, as she dodged combatively from one distracting diversion to another.
Loves to laugh.
Almost like a character in Alice in Wonderland.
I am a talker, so.
Was this the real Lori? Or is she playing a character?
A lot, okay?
And playing me too, or trying to.
Okay.
By early September 2019, 2 months after the shooting death of Charles Vallow in Phoenix, one thing was obvious. The characters in this drama were settling into their roles. Chad Daybell was the prophet, the leader of the group, the man one investigator described as an unattractive, unsuccessful author, transformed into the keeper of the gates of heaven, foretelling the imminent end of the world, and dictating with the wave of his hand the worthy and the damned. And Lori Vallow? Well, she played a sort of nymph, a divine partner for all time, a heavenly honeypot, if you will. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Doug Hart worked the case from the start and knows as much about Chad and Lori as just about anyone. There's a kind of a mutual manipulation that these two had going, right?
Unquestionably, yes. It is absolutely a two-way street. Lori used sex to manipulate Chad, and Chad used his visionary status to manipulate Lori.
But moths and flames can't forever exist 900 miles apart. So, 7 weeks after Charles's death, Lori packed up her kids, JJ and Tylee, and moved them to Rexburg, Idaho, or as she called it, Zion, to an apartment about 10 minutes from the rural property where Chad happened to live with his wife, Tammy. Oh, and we should add there was another migrant to Zion, Lori's brother, Alex Cox. His character has been described as Lori's angel of death.
He was one who was willing to do anything for his sister and ultimately anything for Chad.
Such a supposedly funny, mild-mannered man, according to people who had met him in other contexts, and yet there he was.
Yes, but clearly also an absolutely cold-blooded killer.
Here in our jailhouse chat, we did get one confirmation at least, the obvious one, that yes, they had moved to Idaho because Chad was there, and well, that was where the righteous would gather before the end times. But something else had happened too, revealed by text messages and a friend's eyewitness account. Chad had declared that Lori's daughter Tylee had turned dark. And dark, in those days, seemed to have a way of foreshadowing death. But as she told her story, Lori fixed on a theme she pursued throughout our talk. Tylee, she said, was sick and in pain due to what she called persistent pancreatitis.
She drove up to Idaho and followed me up there. She had to stay in bed for days, right?
But just a week after they arrived, on Tuesday, September 8th, the family, Lori, Tylee, JJ, and Alex, went to Yellowstone National Park, about a 90-minute drive from Rexburg.
We were going to go see Old Faithful, and she wanted to go. So she got up out of bed. JJ was running around, and she was smiling, and you have seen the pictures, right?
These are the last images ever taken of Tylee. As for little JJ, less than a week later, on September 14th, Lori and JJ went on an outing to a wildlife park called Bear World. And a few days after that, Lori's friend Melanie Gibb went to Idaho, where Lori had some shocking news. JJ had just become a zombie.
The reason why I believe he became a zombie is that he was going to stop Chad and Lori from going forward. They didn't want anybody to stop them from being together, basically, and I think he was in the way.
September 22nd, the very last photo of JJ, ready for bed in his red pajamas. That night, according to Lori's visitors, JJ was acting up. Melanie Gibbs' husband, David Warwick, saw Alex take JJ outside.
A couple hours later, Alex brings back JJ. And he walked in, he had JJ on, he was asleep on him, and he carried him up to bed.
By morning, JJ was gone and never seen again. And just 1 week later,
There is some crazy stuff that happened. I would hope that has nothing to do with this.
it wasn't over yet.
And remember, we talked about that. It's like Melanie was there. At what point do you maybe leave? Like, I know her and David left, but then you get on the phone, you call the police. You say, I'm sorry, I don't have any evidence, but there's something's wrong. Something's going on in this house.
I would think so. I mean, you don't just let kids be victimized. I was watching the Jody Hildebrandt Ruby Frankie thing today. I hadn't watched it yet.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. The neighbors all suspected something was going on, but nobody said anything. No one called the police, no wellness checks. You know, that little boy luckily got out. So yeah, it's the same kind of thing where, you know, if they suspected something was up, but you know, Lori, I believe, has this charisma and this ability to sort of OJ her way out of things, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she just could convince people. She had that same kind of that personality, which I think it's narcissism actually, but
Yeah, and I think also there needs to maybe be some changes in the law, because you always hear that story. They had a restraining order, or the neighbors had called and CPS went in. The reaction is always, the police always come back and say, well, we didn't have any proof, or we didn't see anything, or, you know, you can't just arrest people on a suspicion. You have to have, you know, and you don't have to have evidence. And so it's like, well, then what good is that? Why do you even call 911? Because unless there's a murder and you've got the gun in your hand, you know, so,
or unless there are wounds, you know, visible, they can't really do anything. It's so sad. It's so hard. I'm sure Melanie wants to kick herself, you know, for not saying anything.
Yeah. And, you know, she's speaking out now. And I think that's an effort to make it look like, you know, she was completely fooled as well. That you know, they pulled the wool over her eyes as well.
How could they do a blog every day? It's been like 5 years. It's mind blowing.
No,
It's mind blowing.
a lot happened.
Mm-hmm. Tragedies in my life. So the media loves to take tragedies and turn them into crimes, turn them into horrible things. And I had a lot of tragedies in a row, like a domino effect.
Tragic dominoes? Or maybe, as investigators could see as they collected evidence, something far more intentional. Just 3 weeks after Tylee was last seen alive, and a week after JJ's disappearance, a frightened man called 911 in the Phoenix suburb of Gilbert, Arizona.
Someone just shot my window. I was pulling in my house.
The voice on the line belonged to this man, Brandon Boudreau. At the time, he was going through a nasty custody fight with his wife, Melanie Boudreau, the niece of Lori Vallow and her brother Alex Cox. The police arrived quickly, captured the scene on body cam, and released this blurred video.
Yeah, so I was just pulling in. I noticed a green Jeep Wrangler. They lifted their back window.
Brandon told the officers that the Jeep's back window opened. Somebody, hunkered down where the Jeep's back seat should have been, stuck out a rifle where the missing spare tire should have been, and a bullet whizzed by Brandon's ear, shattered the window of his car.
Okay, so they shot, then what happened?
It hit my window, and instead of turning in, it scared me really bad.
And then, he said, the shooter took off.
I noticed the green.
The Jeep was green or gray, said Brandon later, and had Texas plates. And what do you know? It didn't take long for police to identify it. The Jeep belonged to Tylee. Her now deceased stepfather, Charles Vallow, bought it for her. And the guy driving the Jeep? Later, Brandon told the police it looked like Lori's brother. Remember, Alex had already killed his sister's husband, Charles, so was he trying to shoot his niece's estranged husband, too?
There is some crazy stuff that happened. I would hope that has nothing to do with this.
A lot of crazy in Brandon's life. His wife had run off to join Lori and Chad and Alex up in Rexburg before launching a custody battle for the couple's 4 children. And as text messages have since revealed, Brandon was very much out of favor with Chad and Lori, who were condemning him as a Gadianton, a criminal in Mormon lore. And then, weeks after a quick divorce, Melanie married a
another
guy
name
she
we've
had
heard
just
of.
met, an Ian. So what would Melanie and her new partner Ian tell us about the attempt on Brandon's life? They sat with us in the spring of 2020.
Did you ask Alex if he tried to shoot Brandon?
I did. And he made some jokes about it. And then we both talked about how insane that would be for him across the street with a rifle in broad daylight in a recognizable car. He denied it many times.
That was hardly a surprise, but investigators thought this might be a pertinent point about Brandon and the attempt on his life. Charles's death hadn't paid off in insurance money the way it appeared Chad and Lori hoped it would, which probably meant they needed cash. And Brandon?
There was the belief among them that he had a big life insurance policy. He made good money, he had a good job, so they knew that he had access to money.
And then there was also this fascinating piece of evidence. On the day of the shooting, here was Lori on surveillance video at her rented storage unit, joined by the still very married Chad Daybell. Here, police watched them bring in a tire, just like the one that was missing from Tylee's Jeep when Brandon was shot at. And then they lugged in a folded back seat, which would have created space in the back of the Jeep for a shooter. On the way out, Chad gave Lori a hand in a more intimate sort of way. And then the day after the shooting, Alex showed up at the same storage unit in Idaho. And as you can see, he carried out the tire Chad had put in the day before, and then also carried out the folded back seat. And meanwhile, 2 days after the attempt on Brandon's life, as then FBI agent Doug Hart learned when he combed through text messages, Lori was getting antsy. She and Chad had planned a real date, but had to cancel because...
I mean, you've been to Rexburg, it's a small town, and Chad's, the chances of him being spotted while on a real date with Lori are pretty significant.
Tammy wouldn't like that. Then, the very next day,
Chad sends a message to Lori, big news about Tammy. Tammy's been possessed by this entity, Viola. I don't know the timing for, quote, removal, but once it's been affirmed, I don't want to wait.
Something would have to be done. Oh, and it would be.
She's going to get put away. All of the evidence is pointing right at her and Chad. I mean, according to this show, they have text messages, they have footage at the storage unit. Maybe it's all circumstantial. I don't know, but holy cow.
I think what's going to be interesting is to see if they do wait to get this over and then maybe go against Melanie. She got married very quickly to this Aaron guy that she's married to now. Yeah. And he even, when he found out about it, if I remember correctly, he was even like, I think I may have gotten married too soon. I don't think I knew her well. Do you remember that?
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, there was something about that. And
this looks like a hornet's nest I just got into.
Yeah, and they met on a dating site, if I remember right, like an LDS dating site, and they literally were married within a week of meeting or something, like very short time, week, 2 weeks, something like that. 4 kids. I think Brandon had the kids, and there's also, I don't know whether Keith's going to show up, but there's a scene where she goes to Brandon's house and says, I want to see my kids, and there was like a restraining order or something like that, and she got in trouble for that. So even then, she was pushing the law just like Lori, and Lori was, her aunt that took her mother's spot because her mother had died of diabetes. And so this was the mother, that she knew. And so she was starting to copy her behavior. So I don't know. That's very complicated and it's very, very sad. But I think the saddest part is, and maybe it's not sad. Maybe it's not sad, but I'm hoping that LDS people that are watching this will recognize the lingo, Gadianton robber, past lives, evil spirits taking over. If nothing else, it would hopefully make them go, think about that a little bit.
Yeah, you hope so, that it would make them pause and just think, some of this doctrine is iffy in the
Yeah.
wrong hands, obviously. It's so literal in their case. Like, I remember thinking somebody might be subject to a bad spirit, but I never thought anybody could be a zombie that we should just shoot.
So it's kind of the idea of like you go off to college, learn a bunch of things, have experiences, that's what life is, and then you go home. You have
As Lori sat and explained, it all seemed so benign, as if she were in a temple wearing robes instead of bright orange and blue handcuffs in a high-security jail. You'd almost forget what she was here for. Things like this.
Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Hi, I need to report something.
On October 9th, 2019, 1 week after police suspected Lori's brother Alex Cox tried to kill her nephew in suburban Phoenix.
Someone just shot my window.
And 3 months after Alex did kill Lori's husband, Charles.
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
A 911 call came into an Idaho sheriff's office.
Okay, what is your name? My name is Tammy Daybell.
Tammy Daybell, calling on a cold autumn night to report that when she returned late that evening from a church event, a man with a gun confronted her outside the home she shared with Chad Daybell.
What was he wearing? He was all dressed in black and he had a ski mask on. I pulled up into our driveway and I didn't step out of the back seat of my car and suddenly he was there and he had a paintball gun and he was and like he was going to shoot at me. So I yelled for my husband and then he took off running around the back of my house.
Who was that masked man? The FBI ran a cell phone geolocation search, which revealed that Alex was near, and then his phone was shut off just at the time of the attempted shooting.
He was, had a rifle and was shooting at me, so. But nothing came out of the gun either.
It was months later when Detective Ball sifted through Alex's digital trail and concluded that what Tammy Daybell thought was a paintball gun was not that at all. That paintball gun incident, what was that really in your mind?
I think that was attempted assassination of Tammy that was planned out by Lori, Chad, and Alex.
And after the failed attempt, said investigators, Alex went on an internet search for AR-15 cold weather operation. So was it the cold weather that saved Tammy Daybell that time? Maybe. Added to this, Tammy didn't park in her usual spot.
And so when Tammy Daybell pulled in the driveway she normally didn't park in, it likely threw Alex off. He had to run further than he would have, and it could have shaken that gun. Thus, the gun misfired or didn't fire at all.
And she may have heard like some sort of semi-pop and thought it was paintball.
Exactly.
So, plan A having failed, apparently it was time for plan B. 10 days later.
911, where's your emergency?
We just found my mom. She's on the ground frozen, she's dead. I'm Chad, the husband. She's clearly dead. We don't know.
Sorry.
Chad and his son called to report that Tammy had died in her sleep.
Okay, Chad, I'm going to get somebody up to you right now.
Okay.
Later that morning, Chad notified Tammy's sister, Sam.
I got a phone call from Chad telling me that she had passed away in her sleep.
How do you process something like that?
You don't. Because I had just seen her. And it just didn't
She was fine.
It didn't feel real. Didn't feel right.
What did Chad say happened?
That she'd been sick and had a coughing fit and passed away. It was a really hard moment.
Tammy was buried without delay in her hometown in Utah. There was no autopsy. Chad's choice, the sheriff said, because back then it just didn't seem suspicious. It was later, when the story began to emerge, that they exhumed Tammy's body, and the ME found bruises on her arms as if she were held down, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. Just what lead investigator Ball suspected.
I don't think I'll ever forget that moment when he said, I have the results. of Tammy's autopsy. They're ruling it a homicide. And, we all knew it.
And when looking for suspects, well, once again, detectives did not have to look far. When Tammy did die, did the evidence show that Alex was there?
No, close by. It's my belief that Chad went and picked him up and brought him back to the house, and that the two of them did that together, and then Chad took him back to where his car was parked.
But that was a two-person crime?
I don't see how you could do it otherwise.
Later at Chad's trial,
I had not heard that
exorcist
before. I
decided it
didn't
would be
realize
difficult
Alex
for
was
one
involved.
person to complete the task. That is difficult for Alex without Chad's help.
I'm trying.
But sitting here with me, Lori simply dismissed all that. No foul play at all, she said. Perfectly innocent.
Tammy died of natural causes. Tammy knows the truth. I love her and she loves me. We've been friends for eternities.
Yes, and nowadays, Tammy comes to visit her in jail, said Lori. Anyway, the funerals weren't over. Another one coming soon.
I remember a sense of relief. Like, okay, the guy who was in charge of this stuff is gone.
But first, it was time for a wedding.
I'm actually a little disappointed. I thought there would be more Lori interview and not as much rehashing of the story. I mean, she's doing a great job telling the story, really condensing it into I really thought there would be an hour of her talking and them talking back and forth.
Yeah, I feel like the same way we're not getting a lot of Lori. We're getting little snippets of her denying. And for her to say that Tammy visits her in prison, how delusional would you have to be unless she's just lying through her teeth? I wonder if she believes it. That's the part I'm just not sure about.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is interesting, and I know some other people have mentioned this as well, is she hasn't had her trial yet. They haven't picked a jury yet. How can you show this and then expect to find a jury and Dateline's all over the nation, right? People are watching it from coast to coast. So how do you find a jury? Did you watch the Dateline thing back in March? Oh no, I didn't see that. Dateline, Lori Vallow? No, I live in Utah. Arizona is little Gilbert and Chandler, though that's little Utah. Everyone knows this story. I don't know how she can get, and I think really because she is already convicted and she's being her own lawyer, I think they're like, this is just going to be a circus.
Not allowing cameras in there, right? No filming of
She's trying to block the cameras, but Arizona will allow cameras. I guess Circuit TV is going to be there and she's trying to fight against that. But that was one of the other things that was so funny. It's like, she's fighting against having cameras, but Dateline, absolutely, please let me be on your show. Oh,
I don't know. Maybe they've already chosen. You don't think they have? They haven't chosen a jury?
Chosen a jury yet.
I can't imagine they would be filming this real
I
hard.
think I heard next week, like March 11th, there's going to be some kind of court procedure. It's just starting. So maybe that's just the beginning of picking a jury and the whole bit. Well, Lila, I don't know about you. I'm going to let you go. I'm just going to watch the rest of this on TV because like I said, I'm a little disappointed. I thought there'd be more Lori and not so much of the recap, but I think he's doing a great job. And if people weren't aware of the story, he's really condensing it well.
There's a lot of people who don't know the story. I run into people all the time who have no idea what I'm talking about when I
know.
Maybe it's just our little group is aware, Utahns and Arizonans probably.
Yeah, people that are really entrenched in the religion, I think, are probably more aware of it, and people outside. But I mean, there's a lot of things going on. When I went to the Restore conference, there were a lot of things that were going on in some of the mega churches in the evangelical world that I didn't know who they were.
We didn't know about. Yeah.
I wasn't following that story. So I'm glad that he's doing this. But anyway, well, I am so glad. Thank you for joining me tonight. It was so great to have somebody
Thanks
with
for having me.
Yeah, and let's do a show afterwards and get the gals together and just kind of rehash this because
Sounds good.
It is fascinating. So, all right, good night.
Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. I'm going to turn on Dateline on the TV and finish watching this. And if you have any questions, you can email me or DM me because there is so many things. The Mormon Church, the Mormon religion literally has its own lingo that other people don't understand. When you talk about a ward or a stake or something in the temple or covenant promises and things like that, it can get very like, what are they talking about? What's a Gadianton robber, you know? But it's absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to go finish watching it. You do that as well. And let's talk later. So thanks for joining me tonight. Bye-bye.